in the last lesson, it was a two-part series, and I talked about the introduction to token bonding curves and what they are. Essentially, they are basically an automatic market maker where it will continuously buy and sell. It will continuously mint and burn tokens based on whatever the users give to the smart contract. So it's governed by a smart contract, and it's enforced with a mathematical formula. So that was what we talked about. If you have not watched that, I'll link it in the comments below. And today we're going to talk about the implications, use cases, and live projects that are using token bonding curves. So, as mentioned earlier, token bonding curves provide instant liquidity because it's constantly minting and burning tokens based on the collaterals that you give. So the collaterals could be something like Ether. You give Ether to the smart contract, it will mint and burn tokens accordingly. Or it will mint tokens accordingly and give you native tokens. Or if you give native tokens to the smart contract, it will burn that native token and return the collaterals, which is ETH, to you. And everything is the prices are based on the supply in the market. And that's all governed by the mathematical formula. So it provides instant liquidity, and it's a continuous function. It continuously mint and burn tokens. We can also look at things like building in a bid and ask spread. So in the last lesson, we talked about how we can have a sell curve and a buy curve. And there are two different curves. And that spread is the spread where you can generate income from liquidity, of which maybe a proportion of that goes into the bonding curves, like to support the bonding curve, or another proportion can go into stuff like a foundation that governs. It's a community, decentralized, it's a DAO. A foundation is a DAO that organizes and coordinates activities in the ecosystem. So that could also be something. And the whole point is to mitigate pump and dump schemes, where you want to incentivize early adopters to come in, hold your tokens, and as the price goes up, which is affected by the supply in the market and governed by the smart contract, then you can start selling. You don't want people to buy a lot and then start dumping them into the market and it really reduces the price of the tokens. So these are some implications of token bonding curves. But what about the use cases? There are three main use cases, which is crowdfunding, mass curation, or we call them curation market, as well as reducing the need for secondary markets. In general, the incentive mechanism here is to give a user a guaranteed future cash flow. So the ecosystem doesn't only generate money because people are coming in and you earn money from those people coming in. That's a Ponzi scheme, and we're not talking about a Ponzi scheme here. However, the ecosystem itself generates money because the ecosystem itself is a business model. So it can generate revenue. All the revenue doesn't have to go into token bonding curve. It could be maybe just 10% of the revenue goes into the curve to support the curve. So now the curve is both part revenue and part participation because the ecosystem continues to grow. So then as more and more people come into the ecosystem, the curve grows, and as the project becomes more successful, it gains more revenue, and part of the revenue goes into the curve, so the curve continues to grow. And you as a user, you own the tokens that when you sell in the future, you're basically getting rewards for the future cash flow. So that's one of the main idea. So relating that to crowdfunding, that relates to crowdfunding because then if you want to fund a project from a crowd, you need to guarantee future cash flow. You also want to let them know that this is not a scam and this is how it works. This is the formula in place. Everything is transparent. You can see it. You can see what are the factors or what are the variables that will affect the prices. And if you think that this is a good project, you can come in to fund and join. So that's the traditional way of crowdfunding. The other way, which a lot of people are experimenting now, is a lot of donation. So crowd donation, and how can you incentivize more people to donate? And the other thing also is when you crowdfund a project, let's say, so instead of a business idea, you're going to fund a project, and the project will create something in the end. So for example, if you're crowdfunding something that can be sold, then you get to own a proportion of that as well. So for example, if you're crowdfunding prescription drugs, the research of prescription drugs, the outcome is this prescription drug that can be sold in the market. And what we can do is we can link the intellectual property to a non-fungible token, and then it can be traded on the secondary market. Then you get to get rewards on that as well. So there are a lot of interesting ideas where you can combine, basic token bonding curves. You can expand a lot of different areas. You can combine token bonding curves with a lot of other examples that's already available in the market, and just create this solution or this token business model that helps you that serves the objectives that the entire ecosystem wants to achieve. The second thing is mass curation. So when we're looking at the tokens are actually tokenized signals. These are signals to tell you if something is good or not, because the tokens get more expensive. One of the properties is that as more supply is there in the market, more tokens are there in the market, the price of tokens increase. That's the general idea. So you can look at mass curation in a way where if there are a lot of tokens, a lot of people holding the tokens to this product, then it's a lot more valuable, because as if another person who wants to own the token, it's actually more expensive than the price he pays is actually higher than the previous guy, and he's willing to do that. It means that he has faith that the future cash flow will be even higher than the amount he pays for. So that's one way to curate items, and there are a lot of examples out there that I'll show you later. The other thing is, because we talk about continuous market, we talk about instant liquidity, what we want to do is to reduce the need for secondary markets. Secondary markets will be stuff like your exchanges, where you can trade outside of the ecosystem itself, so trade on secondary markets. And there are a lot of problems with exchanges. As you know, we've got a lot of hacks, and a lot of hacks are actually internal. So that's quite dangerous. But what if we can create this protocol, or we can create this solution where it's governed by mathematical formula, it's governed by machines, it's governed by code, then you reduce the risk of these kind of attacks, and you also don't need exchanges. The other thing about exchanges is that we have this thing called a long tail phenomenon, where if you look at exchanges, you only have the top 10 coins that's being traded actively, and then you have a lot of the rest of them. We call them a long tail, so a very long tail where the action is really, really small. The interaction, the trade, the demand is very, very tiny. So if I have one of those tokens, I can't really liquidate that, because the exchanges are not, there's no demand for it. However, with token bonding curves, where we have continuous liquidity, and the smart contract will actually buy and sell these tokens, then we don't need, for all these small little tokens that are not popular on exchanges, we can solve them with token bonding curves. So what are the different use cases? So for that, we have Bancor, and Bancor helps to liquidate between cryptocurrencies without exchanges. So I'm talking about the long tail phenomenon, where you have small tokens. Maybe you're just starting up, or maybe it's for a very niche community. This is where token bonding curves can be helpful to help you to liquidate the tokens. You've got Meme Factory, where it's talking about token curation. Ocean Protocols also on curation. Then the rest of them are in general about more on token funding. So you have OneHive, OS Coins, Common Stack, Zapstock, and Molecule. These are all very interesting projects. I've done a couple, I think. Okay, and also these all the things here. Nothing here is investment advice. I'm just telling you the live projects that are using token bonding curves. The biggest one will be Bancor, because they're live and they're doing quite a bit of trade. The rest of them, they're all very, very interesting. So if you're interested, I would recommend you to go deeper into them and just check them out. So, and where do I go next? Alright, and if you're interested in more stuff like that, you can go and check out the Token Economics Blueprint course. It's an online course, and you have the different, you can take all the courses, or you can take a specific one that's related to you. And also, some of them also come with lecture notes. So you can scan the QR code or go to the link below, bit.ly/tokenomics201. And till then, the next session I will talk a little bit more about the math behind the different types of bonding curves, the different math you can think of, and there's no like perfect math. It really depends on what your objectives are, and you can translate them into mathematical logics for the curves. So that'll be a bit more technical, but also be quite interesting. Until then, I'll see you next time. Bye bye.